On the 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square Massacre, people in Taiwan hold a vigil to remember the struggle for freedom and democracy in China. A changing of the guard. Chip giant TSMC's new chair takes the reins. Plus, Taiwan's diplomatic ally Palau is hacked, with hundreds of documents about the two countries' relationship stolen. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Liao. A vigil in Taipei is marking the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square Massacre. It's now 35 years since Chinese troops opened fire on pro-democracy protesters in Beijing in 1989. Reese Ayers is at Freedom Square, where the vigil is about to take place. Reese, why is this event being held in Taiwan?
Well, Leslie, Taiwan may very well be one of the last places in Asia where memorial events like this can even take place. They obviously can't happen in China. Hong Kong used to hold annual events, but those have become impossible after a series of crackdowns and national security laws there. Just today, we heard from Hong Kong's leader, John Lee, who said that there'll be an increased police presence in the city and also warned of threats to Hong Kong's security. So now people gather here in Freedom Square in Taipei. One of the closest places to Beijing, where people can still publicly and safely express their grief and share their experiences. Taiwan holds this vigil every year on June 4th to remember those affected by the events leading up to and after the Tiananmen incident in 1989. Now, also this year, there will be a weeks-long art exhibition at the Chiang Kai-shek Memorial Hall there behind me, also to help keep memories of that incident alive.
A tower of twisted bodies. This replica of Danish artist Yen Galshot's Pillar of Shame, currently on display in Taipei, pays tribute to those who lost their lives fighting for freedom throughout history, like the democracy protesters in Beijing in the early summer of 1989. June 4th marks the 35th anniversary of the day China's government sent in troops to quash student-led protests that had occupied Tiananmen Square for a month and a half. Those students were calling for, among other things, freedom and democracy, rights that have been eroded in China and beyond in the decades since.
Most people think June 4th happens back in 1989 and then basically ended on June 4th. But the reality is not. Look at what happened in Tibet. Look at what happened in Xinjiang. Look at what happened in Hong Kong. And look at what is happening right now in Taiwan.
Casey Huang is one of 18 artists featured at the Life, Death, Preserve, Forgotten exhibition in Taipei, displaying works about the threats facing freedom and democracy across the world. Huang's work includes a performance piece, filmed over several years, that seeks to preserve the painful memories of the bloody crackdown on the Tiananmen protesters.
Every year on the eve of June 3rd and June 4th, I would ride a bicycle as if I'm the ghost from 1989, a messenger telling people that the People's Liberation Army are coming to kill us and we should defend it.
Huang fled Hong Kong for Taiwan a number of years ago, fearing for his safety as China tightened its grip on the once more liberal territory through a series of crackdowns and national security laws.
I escaped Hong Kong and came to Taiwan because I'm searching for the freedom of artistic expression. Unfortunately, that is no longer possible in Hong Kong.
As for Hong Kong's own Pillar of Shame statue, it was torn down in 2021, a symbol of Beijing's campaign to silence critics of the Communist Party. Now, Taiwan remains the only Chinese-speaking country to host significant public memorials and vigils in remembrance of June 4th, 1989.
觉得挺难得的，因为香港现在这些话题都不太能谈论了，现在都是很敏感。
台湾人很努力去守护住这些珍贵的民主还有自由。
The Life, Death, Preserve, Forgotten exhibition runs until June 13th at the Chiang Kai-shek Memorial Hall in Taipei, The same spot a massive vigil in remembrance of the Tiananmen Square Massacre will take place on the evening of the anniversary. Justin Wu, Sandy Chi and reins in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Now, that vigil I mentioned in the clip just there is set to take place right here, starting in about 30 minutes' time. We're going to hear from some Tiananmen survivors themselves and also from some democracy activists who are going to call attention to a range of issues, human rights issues regarding China. Now, in China, there's been an increase in security and censorship. That's typical government action around this time of year. As I mentioned, there used to be vigils held every year in Hong Kong, but just in the last week or so, we've seen 8 arrests of people for simply posting online about the anniversary. There will be similar memorial events happening in cities around the world, but Taiwan may be the last place in the Chinese-speaking world where events and vigils of this scale are free to take place in public.
And I'm sure that's a right the vigil participants are thankful they can exercise. Thank you, Reese. That was Reese Ayers reporting live from Taipei. Taiwan's most valuable company, TSMC, has new leadership. The firm has confirmed a new chair and board, and many in the tech world are expecting a smooth transition. Still, the stakes are high as the firm continues to expand both at home and abroad. Joyce Sung has more.
A new chapter for the world's leading contract chipmaker and Taiwan's largest company. TSMC has officially been handed over to CEO C.C. Wei, succeeding Mark Liao as the company's chair as Liao retires. Liao presided over the annual general meeting for the last time, taking questions from investors and appearing more lighthearted, dodging difficult questions by passing them to Wei. The two have led the firm through a global chip shortage and tripled its market value since 2018, turning the Taiwanese firm into a household name worldwide. Now, Wei is pledging to keep customer confidence in the firm's ability to provide industry-leading tech. Wei faces a monumental task to lead the main chip supplier for hundreds of firms, including tech giants Apple and Nvidia, all while it expands operations in Taiwan and abroad to meet growing demand for advanced chips. Now, looming over this year's general meeting is TSMC's struggles in the U.S. state of Arizona. It's pledged $65 billion into the desert state to open 3 advanced chip fabs, but clashing with American workers over cultural differences, construction has dragged on. But addressing this project here today, leaders say that like any business venture, there is a learning curve and that TSMC intends to overcome its challenges in the desert state as well. Unlike at its first Japan fab, which opened in February after less than 2 years of construction, industry analysts say TSMC's top-down management style is working against it in Arizona.
Part of the damage done now is that because of the history of the last few years in Arizona, TSMC now has a terrible reputation among American workers. I don't see any signs so far that they think that they need to rethink how they approach labor, at least for the Arizona plant.
TSMC's Arizona site is slated to house some of the firm's most advanced tech outside Taiwan, while it faces a tense geopolitical situation and pressure to diversify to secure global chip supplies. Meanwhile, as global tech leaders hail a new era of artificial intelligence in computing, which requires cutting-edge chips like TSMC's, industry analysts say another challenge for TSMC's new leadership is to decide how many eggs to put in the AI basket.
Everybody believes that there's a lot of money to be made. There is a possibility that this is all just a bubble. Right, there is because nobody has shown that you can actually make money yet using AI applications.
At such a pivotal time for tech, stakes are high for a smooth transition at TSMC. In the parting words of outgoing chair Liao, whether it's in Arizona or Japan, TSMC will continue to learn and adapt to keep providing leading-edge chips to the world. Chris Ma and Joyce Zinn for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan says 19 Chinese military aircraft were spotted operating around the country on Monday. 17 of those aircraft, along with 8 naval ships, crossed into Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. This area is used by the military for defensive purposes, but is not sovereign territory. Some of the aircraft came within 42 nautical miles from the north of Taiwan. Tensions in the Taiwan Strait have increased since the inauguration of President Lai Ching-te on May 20th. Taiwan's housing market is heating up, with more units bought and sold than last year. Housing transactions in Taipei, Taoyuan, and Tainan totaled more than 10,000 in May, a 23% rise year on year. It was the highest single-month figure for May in over a decade. And as major tech companies expand their operations in southern Taiwan, demand for housing has grown in Tainan, Jiayi, and Kaohsiung, with prices in those cities going up too. Leaked recordings have raised questions about how 2 firefighters died in a Hsinchu fire last month. The audio suggests the 2 men radioed for help 8 times in 5 minutes, giving their names and location. The city's fire chief earlier said the Mayday calls had been faint, with no indication who was making them. Hsinchu City Councilor Yang Ling-yi says she got the recordings from an anonymous source and says it shows the fire crew took 10 minutes to launch a search after the final distress call. The firefighters were found in a stairwell overcome by smoke. The city's fire department has asked police to investigate the leak. We're going to take a quick break, but stay with us, because coming up on TaiwanPlus News, we meet Taiwan's leading woman in wine.
Thanks for watching Taiwan Plus. For more stories from around the world, including the Solomon Islands, download the Taiwan Plus app.
Welcome back. You're watching Taiwan Plus News. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has met with the current and former leaders of Cambodia, a country that's been building closer ties with China. Austin met with Cambodia's former Prime Minister Hun Sen and his son, current Prime Minister Hun Manet. The visit comes just days after Cambodia and China wrapped up joint military exercises. Washington is concerned that a Cambodian naval base that China is developing could give Beijing another outpost in the contested South China Sea. An unnamed U.S. official says there is hope that Hun Manet may be more friendly toward the U.S. Taiwan has condemned a cyber attack on its diplomatic ally Palau and says it's working with the Pacific nation to beef up its cybersecurity. According to the New York Times, more than 20,000 documents were stolen in the attack, including hundreds detailing Palau's relationship with Taiwan. Palau claims China orchestrated the hack, but Beijing denies this, and a ransomware group called Dragon Force has claimed responsibility. To get more on just what this is all about, Jaime Ocon spoke to Alan Liska, an intelligence analyst from Recorded Future.
So Alan, the New York Times is reporting that almost 20,000 documents were leaked online, things like secret military locations and even information about Taiwan's diplomatic relationship with Palau, one of few. Now, Palau is accusing China, but what do you make of this attack? How significant is this?
For the people of Palau, it's a very big deal. And for the people who pass through Palau, because some of the information that appears to have been leaked is passport information, diplomat information. So, and Palau is a very, very important country in the ASEAN area. And I do think this is part of a broader trend that we're seeing where island nations in the Asian Pacific and in the Caribbean have been hit very hard with ransomware over the last couple of years. And in general, it's indicative of a broader problem. So in fairness, China goes after everybody, no matter how good or bad their cybersecurity is. But what we're seeing is We don't know for sure in this case. We don't have enough evidence to say one way or the other, and I want to be very clear on that. But it wouldn't be the first time that we have seen nation-state actors use ransomware as a cover for other types of activity.
So you mentioned ransomware. Can you kind of explain what that is and how a cyber attack like this one was carried out?
When we talk about this, there's sort of 3 stages to a ransomware attack. You have the initial access, so they get into the network. Then you have the operator who carries out the attack, the encryption and the data theft. And then most ransomware groups, what they have is they have a data extortion site. And yes, that site is usually on the dark web. And that is how they use that. That's part of their extortion tactics. If you're not going to pay to have your files decrypted, then you're going to pay to not have your data leaked to our extortion site. And it is obviously very concerning having that out there. It does absolutely put the nation of Palau at a disadvantage, and it hurts them. Now, as far as other countries not cooperating, that has not been the case. In fact, generally, we see other countries stepping up to help countries like Palau that have been hit. And in fact, that's what we've seen here, where we've seen Taiwan offer to help. We've seen Australia offer to help. We see countries kind of coming together to try and help each other out when we see this kind of attack happen.
So with that being said, do you think that we're going to see more of these attacks happen in the future? And is this going to be part of a trend?
And the problem is that we're seeing this convergence of cybercriminal activity and nation-state activity. And we're seeing an explosive growth in both, which means that you have to defend against everything. And so again, when you're a small nation like Palau, you don't have the resources that Taiwan or Singapore or Japan or many of the bigger countries in the ASEAN area have to defend themselves, and that's unfortunate, but that's kind of the reality where we are right now, and the bad guys aren't going away.
That was intelligence analyst Alan Liska from Recorded Future. South Korea plans to call a public UN Security Council meeting on human rights abuses in North Korea. It's a move likely to face opposition from China and Russia, who say the Security Council is not the right forum for human rights discussions. The council last met publicly on the issue in August last year. Discussions were held behind closed doors from 2020 to 2022. South Korea's UN ambassador says human rights abuses in North Korea do belong to the Security Council's agenda.
The advancement of the DPRK's WMD program is closely intertwined with the dire human rights and humanitarian situation in the country. The Security Council should not neglect the latent risks that systematic human rights violations in DPRK pose to international peace and security.
Hundreds of people have been evacuated after a volcano erupted on the Philippine island of Negros. The country has raised volcano alert levels after Mount Canlaon sent plumes of ash and rocks 5 kilometers into the sky. There have been no reports of injuries so far. Government officials warn there could be more eruptions, possibly triggering flash floods and landslides. The Philippines sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire and experiences frequent volcanic eruptions. Do you like your wine dry, sweet, or something more exotic? Those who aren't sure can turn to a sommelier for guidance. I met one such wine expert from Taiwan who went abroad to cultivate her skills and trailblazed her way through the profession. Traditionally, a sommelier is a wine expert. Someone who can evaluate the nearly infinite varieties of wine on the market and pair them with the perfect dish. But the job has since evolved to accommodate changing tastes.
It's not only for wine, it's including everything, even the water, even the tea.
Leslie Liu is from Nantou County in central Taiwan. She moved away from home to become a sommelier, eventually going overseas to pursue excellence in her craft. Leslie has worked in Taipei, Taichung, and Shanghai. She now lives in Singapore, where she is head sommelier at Odette, one of the highest rated restaurants in the world with 3 Michelin stars. Leslie's background is in international trade, but she realized her outgoing nature wasn't compatible with a job staring at a screen all day.
I think my personality is quite outgoing, talkative. So I feel a little bit boring if you're only looking into the sheets and also looking at the computer, talking to the things which is no emotion.
One of Leslie's mentors told her she needed to move away from Taiwan if she wanted to go far in her field.
I work in Le Mu in Taichung, and which is a female chef called Chen Lanshu. So actually, she is the first one to tell me if you want to become a international recognized sommelier, you have to leave Taiwan because you have zero experience.
She took that advice and ran a long way with it. Leslie is currently the only woman from Taiwan with an advanced certification from the Court of Master Sommeliers. The UK-based organization has 4 levels of certification: introductory, certified, advanced, and master, a level only a few have ever attained. And Leslie is determined to join their hallowed ranks. Aside from her day job, she commits herself to studying for the master exam.
I still study every day. No matter how late I finish at work, I still need to wake up at 7:05. Then 7:30, I need to sit in front of my desk. Then start to study. Then study for 1 hour.
The Master Sommelier test is thorough. It's not just about putting pen to paper, but it's also about being able to derive specific information from a single sip of wine.
Blind testing is very tricky part. Then in the end, you need to get the conclusion. Is where this wine come from, what is the varietal, what is the vintage, what is the climate.
At any given time, Leslie has to keep track of up to 1,000 different wines at the restaurant. But once you see her work, you come to realize she's exactly the kind of person you want doing your wine pairing.
Actually, you have a lot of it's much more fruit driven, and it's not really light as your strawberry. It's a little bit more like blueberry, hints of the mulberry, hints of the tannin. You can find for the earthiness, such as hints of the mushroom. I think the temperature right now will be slightly more chill. I think if you warm up a little bit, you have a much more flavor. This is the one usually I can think about to enjoy with probably root vegetable, such as the beetroots.
But Leslie's strengths aren't just her ability to decide what wine would go good with a roast pigeon. Odette's head of wine says her ability to connect with people is what makes her shine.
And what I've seen her form in terms of relationships, in terms of friendships with all our guests, is something that I don't think you find in a lot of sommeliers around the world.
Leslie must wait 2 years before she can make her bid to become a master sommelier. If successful, she will join that prestigious few who number only in the hundreds, a group where even fewer of its members are women. Her goal is to not only inspire the next generation, but also make headway as a pioneering woman, leaving a legacy that ages, well, like a fine wine. Eason Chen, Howard Zhang, Harel Hughes, and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus. Your morning coffee could now be used for more than just waking you up. Scientists in Australia have brewed up a revolutionary use for leftover grounds as construction materials. Rosie Greninger has more.
It's a daily ritual for many Australians. But now a morning cup of coffee could also help the planet. That's now that researchers at the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology have found a way to turn coffee grounds into a material that can be added to concrete, making it stronger and more sustainable. The grounds are heated in an oxygen-free chamber to create a substance called biochar. This can be used as a substitute for some materials in concrete that are harmful to the environment.
There's a lot of interest, as I earlier said, a lot of interest from the industry because it ticks all boxes. You preserve carbon and you are significantly getting higher strength, which can leverage reduction in cement. So there's all positive sides to this project.
Making concrete produces greenhouse gases, mostly through the use of cement. It's responsible for around 8% of the world's emissions, contributing to global warming. Roughly 50 billion tonnes of sand and gravel are dug up each year for use in concrete. The extraction is often environmentally damaging, and the UN says supply is shrinking. But using a combination of biochar and these other materials, emissions can be reduced while also making the concrete 30% stronger. And it has positives for coffee shop owners too.
Fantastic. It's a very innovative idea. Bring the cost of concrete down, and the materials. Obviously, there's a benefit to the environment for not using harsh chemicals and replacing it with, coffee grounds as a natural product. Easy to access. A lot of cafes could sell their coffee grounds, so end to end, it's a great solution.
Australia produces 75,000 tonnes of coffee ground waste per year, a fraction of the billions of tonnes produced globally. These emit methane as they break down in landfill. The Institute is already in talks with Starbucks to use their coffee grounds and is collaborating with several construction companies. And with this technology, the world's first footpath made with coffee concrete has now been laid in Melbourne. But the Institute doesn't plan to stop at coffee. It hopes other food waste could be used in this way.
In terms of real world, our focus is that we try to transform all of the organic waste that is ending up in landfills for this positive application in concrete. So we anticipate that about 60 to 70% we can divert from landfills into concrete applications.
Food waste accounts for 3% of Australia's emissions, and these researchers believe most of it could be turned into biochar. And while Melburnians might unknowingly use this green footpath, it marks a significant milestone in the quest for sustainable construction practices and an avenue to reduce global emissions. In other words, it's grounds for optimism. Ryan Wu and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
And we'd like to thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Finally today, watch gravity take the wheel of these homemade motorless cars competing at the Red Bull Soapbox race in France. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.